Hey everybody, welcome to the show, around the nation right here, TYT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. So it is Wednesday, and we have a lot of news, so we're going to do that. First, I do want to explain my absence. I'm sure some of you might have been wondering where I was for the last couple of days. On Thursday, my sister suffered a fatal heart attack, and I've been dealing with that. So, funeral was yesterday. So a little bit of a difficult time for me and my family. So, again, super hard, super difficult. Anybody who's suffered a death in the family knows what's going on. But anyway, look, news, it goes on. So we're going to talk about some breaking stuff today. We have a little bit of election news from yesterday. Again, I was a little bit busy yesterday, so I didn't get to track all the different elections, but I have a couple that I want to mention. We also have the Trump-Kim meeting, what happened. We've got the DNC doing what the DNC does. We've got Republicans liking neo-Nazis, etc. So, but before I get into any of that, of course, I do want to thank everybody for their condolences and the well wishes and things like that. I do appreciate that. My family appreciates that, so thank you very much. And again, that's, I had to take the time off to be with the rest of my family and stuff, so totally understandable. But anyway, we do have a good show today, so I'm trying to get back into the regular schedule with, and try to get back to a little bit normal, as normal as we can, of course, make it. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to start out with a story about Michael Cohen. That's new news on that. But first, please give us a like and a share. That helps out a lot. So we'll do that. Just to go back just a minute. So here's a little bit more information on this. Is that heart attack? She was 37 years old, which it's pretty rare, I think, to see something like that for someone who was that young, I think, in my opinion. But she didn't have any health insurance, so no preventative action could be taken because, oh, look, I got no health insurance. So I think I'm going to be pushing on Medicare for all a little bit more, even though that's something that I've always been in favor of. But I think shit just got personal. So I'll definitely be talking about Medicare for all issues and healthcare issues a lot more on the show than previous. So be prepared for that. Okay. Anyway. Let's get into the show. So there's some breaking news about Michael Cohen. Several different stories out, in fact, with the suggestion that this could be it for Cohen, for Cohen's support of Donald Trump. Now, ABC News is reporting that Cohen's legal counsel has decided just earlier today, to drop him. Well, that's weird. Usually people drop their attorneys. In this case, I think it was the opposite. And now, according to sources, since he cannot find representation, he no longer has representation, well, now he will be likely cooperating with federal prosecutors in the Mueller case. Uh-oh. So let me give you some context here. Now, this, of course, happened during a privilege review that's still ongoing of the nearly 3.7 million documents that were seized back in the raids of Cohen's properties and law office. Now, this review, right, it's basically to find out if there is attorney-client privilege. Now, wait a minute. If you listen to President Trump, which I strongly advise against, you would think, oh, no, attorney-client privilege, dead. It's dead. It's dead. I mean, look, that's what he tweeted about. Well, it turns out this entire review was trying to make sure to see that attorney-client privilege stays intact. But anyway, now right after that, the raid that they got the documents at, Cohen decided to go into federal court to try to argue that his attorney should be given a first look to make sure that they didn't see anything that they didn't want him to see. Now, this is from the New York Times. Judge Wood subsequently appointed former federal judge Barbara Jones to act as a special master to conduct an impartial review of the materials and to referee any disputes between Cohen and the government. Trump and the Trump Organization intervened in the case and were also granted access to review materials for potentially privileged items. Now, the result of that, of course, is that Jones last week reported that the first of the 300,000 items reviewed, she had determined that about 162 of them were covered by attorney-client privilege. Well, so much for that being dead. It appears client-attorney privilege is indeed well and alive, and 162 of those documents, of course, fell under that. Now, the rest of them, of course, can be reviewed, and we're trying to figure out what's in them. Now, what's interesting about this is that Cohen, a new breaking report, is expected to be arrested later today in relation to this. So, well, that's fascinating. Now, they're back to Barbara Jones here for a second. Now, she did reject 3 items that Cohen, Trump, or the Trump Organization had designated as privileged. Now, we're going to have to see the results of that, but it might be important, it might not be important. So, just keep that context in mind. They could be important, or they could be potentially embarrassing or damaging. And so, you know, we know that Mueller is now going to have access to those documents. Now, so this leaves Cohen in a pretty difficult spot. So many of those documents are not protected, and his lawyers, of course, have shown themselves the door. Like, oh, see you, man. We're going to drop you like a hot potato. Gone. So, where does that leave Cohen? Well, that leads, of course, to the rumors that Cohen is likely going to flip, and this is according to sources close to Cohen. Now, if he flips on Donald Trump, I've been saying before that, you know, he could have information that is potentially incriminating, or he might not. He might just have embarrassing information or information about possible other financial crimes not related to the original Russia investigation. We don't know. Mueller's keeping his cards pretty close to his chest, although today he did take out about 150, what is it? I forget the word, but he's basically going to be going after Mueller, or I'm sorry, he's going to be going after Manafort. So that's very interesting. So the other thing about Cohen is that Donald Trump could indeed pardon him. And that's something that we've been talking about. Trump is on a pardoning spree. He's pardoned a couple of people posthumously, as well as Alice Marie Johnson. I did that story earlier. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, this could just be a message to people close to him, Manafort and Cohen, that he's going to pardon him. I don't know if that's going to happen. That is a possibility, but that could, of course, create some other ethical issues for Donald Trump. Now, does Trump care about ethical issues? Of course not. But it might make him look bad. It might actually make the situation worse if he does give a pardon to Cohen. So, I don't know. What I do know is that as soon as this gets into the White House, And if Trump has a, his phone next to him, prepare for a White House Twitter meltdown. Because I can guarantee that is likely to happen. This isn't an actual segment here, but I did want to talk about, and I kind of forgot because I got distracted, but the recent election results last night. Just a couple of real quick things. In Nevada, and of course this is related to the next story that I'm going to be talking about. In Nevada, I interviewed one of the candidates, Amy Villela. She was a fantastic candidate. She ran an excellent campaign. She did not win. Instead, Stephen Horsford, who is a lobbyist and a corporate Democrat, ended up winning that primary. He was put in, of course, by the establishment after Ruben Cohen ended up dropping out. So that sucks. She ran, like I said, an excellent campaign. She's a wonderful fighter, amazing progressive, amazing person, and I hope that she continues to fight on, and I think that she will. And so, sometimes there's a loss, but sometimes, of course, that ends up working out in the end for something else. So who knows? But I do think, and I do hope that Amy is going to continue to fight, and maybe next time she will get out that name recognition and she'll be able to beat the establishment candidate and find a way into office where she can do some good. So that was a sad race yesterday. Actually found out this morning. And then one more here we had in South Carolina. This is actually kind of good news. So another person that I interviewed on the show, Mel Hyman in South Carolina, actually ended up going in second. So he now advances to a runoff. That's good news. If he does well in the runoff, then he could go on to take on the Republican in that area. And, of course, Mel Hyman is, of course, very, very progressive in his issues. As I said, I've talked to him before, interviewed him on the show. He's a great progressive, and I hope he does very well in the runoff. So that's just something that happened yesterday in the elections. But now we go to a very interesting story about the Republican side of the Nevada elections. Now, it was only a matter of time until Republicans decided to elect another reality TV star. Now, this time, it happened to be in Nevada. Now, Republicans, having elected Trump, don't see that as an issue. In fact, they love Trump. They're like, oh, reality TV host? No, that just means he's successful. He's successful, he's rich, he's wonderful, he's good America, right? Now, there is one thing in this specific Nevada race that should have been an issue for some pro-family Republicans. You see, this candidate, this Republican that won in this district, happens to also be a pimp. No, I'm not kidding. He's a literal pimp. Now, this is Dennis Hoff. Now, Dennis Hoff is, of course, is a reality TV host who also is the owner of several legal brothels in Nevada. There are certain counties where prostitution is legal. Hey, I'm fine with that. Now, last night, he ended up beating a 3-term incumbent for the chance to face off against a Democrat, Lasia Romanoff, in November's elections. Now, what's interesting is this is supposed to be the Republican. This is a heavily conservative district, so he is the favorite to win. Well, Mr. Hoff's holdings include the Moonlight Bunny Ranch, where the HBO reality program Cat House was filmed. Now, look, as I said, I don't have a problem with legal prostitution. I think it's your body. If, you do what you want, it's that line of work. And it's a perfectly, I think, fine line of work. Now, I'm not sure how I feel about legal pimps. Obviously, I'm concerned about working conditions and exploitation, right, for the sex workers themselves. So, okay, whatever. That's actually not my issue with this person, right? My issue is that he is a Trump sycophant. That's my problem. Now, the 71-year-old calls himself, quote, the Trump of Pahrump, the name of the town he hopes to represent, and has written a book called The Art of the Pimp. Yeah, a little bit of a spin on Art of the Deal, which, by the way, Donald Trump didn't actually even write that book. But anyway, The Art of the Pimp. Now, he even held a rally with Roger Stone. Roger Stone, of course, is a longtime Donald Trump advisor. Now, he celebrated his primary victory alongside Heidi Fleiss. And he said, quote, this victory is all because Donald Trump was the Christopher Columbus for me. He found the way, and I jumped on it. That is actually a pretty apt description there. Because Christopher Columbus, of course, came in and murdered all the indigenous people. So, I mean, I'm just saying, left a gigantic trail of destruction, took it over for his own. That sounds a lot like President Trump, actually. He took over the Republican Party, left a giant trail of destruction, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, but anyway. Now, the other problem with that, of course, is that this is a reliable vote for Trump's policies. Now, those policies have not been very kind to sex workers. For example, President Trump signed FOSTA SESTA earlier this year. Now, FOSTA SESTA, of course, harms sex workers and also creates internet censorship. Now, what it did is that it basically exempted Section 230 of the 1996 Communications Decency Act. Now, that act says, quote, no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. Now, that basically means that if you have an internet service, right, or if you have a website and somebody posts like illegal stuff on your comment board, you don't get in trouble for that, for hosting that site. That seems sensible, right? Hey, man, I just have a forum, and then somebody decided to put, I don't know, links to prostitution or trafficking or whatever in that link. Well, why am I, I didn't post it there. Why am I in trouble? Well, this exception to Section 230 in FOSTA SESTA basically means that website publishers would be responsible if those third parties are found to be posting ads for prostitution, including consensual sex work on their platforms. So that's really, really bad for website owners. And of course, that creates internet censorship that removes a lot of safe harbors for people that are in the sex work industry. Even in places where it's legal, like Nevada. In some parts of Nevada. Las Vegas, of course, is exempt. That's in Clark County, which has banned the practice. So, and again, I don't agree with banning the practice, and I don't agree with FOSTA SESTA. I understand that it was put there to fight against trafficking, but you're actually not fighting against trafficking. You're actually making it harder for people to get out of trafficking, and you're putting them in more danger. Now, how does this have to relate to this guy running in Nevada? Well, Donald Trump, as I said, just hurt people in the sex industry. So please tell me how Donald Trump has been really good for your business. Just saying. Now, as far as Republican voters, he won the primary. He beat a 3-term incumbent. Well, I thought Republicans always went out there and claimed that they were the party of family values. And I put that in quotations because, to be honest, what they do is that they claim that they're pro-family values, but they're actually not. Pro-family is more of a way to basically, it's a code word for we hate gay people. That's basically what it is. But of course, like, oh no, family values, family values. We're pro-family. We're against indecency. Well, I mean, in your opinion, wouldn't sex work be indecent? Again, this isn't my opinion. This is their opinion. And yet, you had enough Republican voters to vote this guy into office. And look, or to advance him to a general election in which he could theoretically end up in office. Because, again, that district is heavily conservative. And so this guy seems to be a front runner. So, look, these voters, they're not pro-family at all. They voted for a pimp because he likes Donald Trump. Doesn't matter what he does. Again, this is the same party where a lot of people ended up voting for a pedophile. Look, I'm pro-sex worker, right? But seriously, you're going to vote for this guy because he likes Donald Trump? Okay, well, I don't want to see another Nevada Republican scream about so-called moral decay. It's the hypocrisy. They're not pro-life. They're not pro-family. And that party continues to prove that over and over and over again. And also that they're not pro-freedom. Okay. Let's move on. Now, following the nuclear summit with North Korea, President Trump is taking a nice little victory lap. In fact, earlier he posted a few tweets. He said, "Just landed, a long trip, but everyone can now feel much safer than the day I took office." Well, that's interesting. "There is no longer a nuclear threat from North Korea. Meeting with Kim Jong-un was an interesting and very positive experience. North Korea has great potential for the future." Well, that's fascinating. There is no nuclear threat from North Korea. Solved. It's over. It's over, guys. We can go home. The North Korea problem has been solved. Now, look, I've said before that I hope he is successful. Well, he has been successful at something. We're just not quite sure what. Now, I have another tweet from him first. He says, "Before taking office, people were assuming that we were going to war with North Korea." Well, you know, when you tweet insults at the North Korean dictator, people kind of get the wrong impression. Or we at least get that impression, which turned out to be, thankfully, wrong. President Obama said that North Korea was our biggest and most dangerous problem. No longer. Sleep well tonight. Okay, then. Well, that's great. So, look, what are the details here for this agreement, right? I mean, look, Donald Trump has obviously, he's very confident that this deal is incredibly strong, right? So it's supposed to be strong. Well, let's see. According to the New York Times, a joint statement signed by the two leaders did not include a timeline for denuclearization or details about how the North would move forward. Instead, the document, which many hoped would be a roadmap for nuclear agreement, was filled with diplomatic language that had been used in previous statements over the past 20 years. Oh. So, basically, they've done just about nothing. So you just fill it with a little bit of, diplomatic, flowery language. You shake, you do a photo op, and everything's great. Great. No, here's what that tweet was. That's a mission accomplished banner. You remember when George W. Bush in the Iraq War put up that giant mission accomplished banner on the aircraft carrier? That's what this is in tweet form. You're not done. This is not mission accomplished. There's actually more things to do. We signed an agreement that really didn't do a whole lot. Now, of course, there's people out there saying, or actually having more of a problem with the fact that it's a photo op. Yeah, I don't really care. Take as many photos as you want. I don't care. What I do care about is results. Now, what's sad is that we really don't have much of an agreement. We don't have a framework. So we haven't really accomplished much. That doesn't mean that we can't move forward and use this as a starting point to actually get that, but we actually have to get there. Don't put up your mission accomplished banner just yet. Now, as far as other criticisms, you're legitimizing a brutal regime. Yeah, I guess you are, but how many times have we realistically done that? We're friends with Saudi Arabia. You don't think that they're also a brutal regime? They cut people's heads off for apostasy. I'm not saying that that makes it okay to do business with North Korea. What makes it okay to do business with North Korea is the fact that we shouldn't be going to war with other countries. We should be using diplomacy. Look, North Korea is brutal, yes, to their own people. Of course, it's horrible. Iran is sort of the same thing. Saudi Arabia, as I just mentioned, doesn't mean that we can't have peace with those countries. We can't go around invading countries that do human rights abuses. Besides, the UN has accused us of human rights abuses. When are we getting invaded? I'm just saying. Look, thinking that we can engage in peace talks with countries who do human rights abuses is kind of absurd, because what it does is that it sets up the premise that we can't ever do business with these countries. Well, if you can't do diplomatic business with these countries, then what's the other option? Invade them. War. And I'm not in favor of war. We shouldn't be in favor of war. And that's what I'm trying to avoid, because a war would be disastrous for South Korea and Japan, and the millions, of course, people in North Korea who are enslaved by a brutal dictator. They would also end up suffering. So war, in this case, is not worth it. Now, of course, these nuclear weapons are a bit of a deterrent from that. And so I think it is very unlikely that they're going to give up any of those nuclear weapons, or at least most of them. And so I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. But look, I want to be hopeful here, right? Because, look, maybe this is a start, and ultimately peace is good. We should be fighting for peace, right? But we need an actual deal, right? We need something that's concrete, that involves verification. And so I'm hoping that they can continue to move forward in these talks and try to hammer something out. Now, one more thing that was mentioned. This is the same thing that we've seen from North Korea before. So, of course, we need to come in with caution. We need to be careful. We need to make sure that this is an actual good deal that does do what it's supposed to do, denuclearize and reduce tensions and actually have peace, and make sure that whatever happens ends up preventing another war. Because in this day and age, we can no longer afford war. It's time we fight for peace. So if Donald Trump can do that, which I have very low expectations of, but if he can do that, we should at least try to encourage it. It's better than the alternative. Okay. I'm going to take a break here. We'll come back We got a story about the DNC, and then we're going to go after some Republican candidates. Well, some Republicans anyway. So please, if you haven't already, give us a like and share. Also, if you're interested, do the super chats, and we'll read them. That also goes to support the show. So, all right, everybody. We'll be back right after this quick break. Around the nation. everybody? Welcome back to the show. Run the Nation right here. TYT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. I have a couple of super chats to read, and holy crap. First, from Mark. Thank you, Mark. Mimi Bracco writes, "You and your family will know what to do with this. I've been through this and understand grief and memories one goes through from this sort of shock. Americans having the additional burden of medical bills adding to their personal loss is obscene and immoral." Thank you, Mimi. That means a lot. I really, really appreciate that. As I said, my sister did pass away. She had a blocked artery, which I think had she had medical care that, because she didn't have insurance, she actually had to pay the ACA fine, because that was cheaper than getting health insurance. I mean, just thinking that maybe that there was something that they could have done had we had health insurance to go in and see a doctor more regularly and get more checkups and things like that. I think that would prevent a lot of people dying. It's not just about my personal tragedy, but it's also about a lot of personal tragedy, because there's a lot of people out there that have lost people without, that might have actually survived had there been health care, had they actually had health care. And so that's why we need Medicare for all, because our for-profit healthcare system kills people. Okay. Ryan asks, please talk about the New Mexico governor's race. I'll talk about that tomorrow, because I don't have anything prepared. I don't know anything about that. But I will look that up, and we'll have a story on it tomorrow. Okay. That said, let's go to the DNC. Okay. The DNC has voted to ban contributions from fossil fuel companies. Well, that's pretty interesting. They're going to ban contributions from fossil fuels. Okay, great. Look at that. Something positive about the DNC. Wow. Well, wait. Let's look at the details. Now, following the vote over the weekend, the DNC will no longer accept donations from corporate political action committees associated with oil, gas, and coal companies. Now, they also they're saying that they adopted a resolution put forward by Christine Pelosi, the daughter of Nancy Pelosi. Oh, well, that's wonderful. Now, the resolution calls for banning all corporate PAC contributions from the fossil fuel industry that conflict with our DNC platform in the name of encouraging Democrats to, quote, walk our talk in harmony with our stated beliefs and convictions. According to HuffPost, the DNC will also consider banning contributions of over $200 from donors employed by the fossil fuel industry. That vote will, of course, take place in August. So, okay, look, this actually isn't bad, but also kind of useless. Why? Well, let's look at the numbers. Donors in the oil and gas industry give almost exclusively to Republicans. So, look, they give to Republicans about 90% of the time. So that slim 10% of money goes to some Democrats. I would think it would end up going to people like Joe Manchin, for example. Now, as far as coal, 100% of donations go to the Republicans from coal. So, look, what kind of impact is this really going to have? I'm guessing not much when it comes to fundraising. It's almost like what happened with Kamala Harris and Cory Booker. Going to say, oh, no, we're not going to take corporate PAC money. But you get all sorts of other money in the form of independent expenditures from corporations anyway. So what have you actually done? Most of your money does not come from those corporate PAC donations. As far as the DNC goes, most of your money does not come from fossil fuel interests. So what are you actually doing? What does this actually accomplish? No, what this is that it's a nice little fig leaf. It's a nice little talking point. Hey, look at the new improved DNC. We're so progressive now. We're not taking money from fossil fuels. But they still take corporate money from the healthcare industry, big pharmaceutical companies, and lobbyists. I'm sorry, it's not enough. What this is of course, this is change on the outside, continuity on the inside. And whenever they do some sort of thing like this, some sort of modest little change, it sounds good, but you really need to look in and dig into the details. And then realize, oh, well, they weren't really giving up a whole lot in doing this. So again, it's one of those things where we're trying to act like we're progressive, even though we're not. Well, congratulations. We found out. But look, that's what's so frustrating about the corporate Democrats. They do something that barely impacts them, and they make a huge deal out of it anyway. Yeah, you stopped fossil fuel money, which you barely get anyway. Do you want a cookie? Look, the DNC, they have proven that they're still in the pocket of their corporate donors. I mean, some of the recent changes, one of the recent changes, of course, was to try to keep somebody like Bernie Sanders out of the primary. We don't believe in democracy. We're still keeping a large portion of our superdelegates. You know why? It's because we don't like progressives. We don't want progressives to win. We don't want progressive policies because we still get money from corporate donors. It's just, we just don't get money from oil and gas and coal. So we're okay with letting some of that go because our true donors are in other places in industry. So they're in the pocket of those donors. They're still not progressive. They're never going to be progressive. And so they don't deserve our support. If you want a candidate, don't look at organizations they belong to. Don't look at, if they're a member of the Justice Democrats. Don't look if they're a member of the PCCC. Doesn't matter. What matters is policy. The policy matters most, and you have to vote for people that have good policy. Okay. Let's move on. Now, Steve King is racist. I think we've already established that already, but nonetheless, he continues to show how racist he is by retweeting a British neo-Nazi. Now, this tweet in question referenced an anti-immigrant article from a political activist named Mark Collett. It said basically, Europe is waking up. Will America in time? So, yeah, basically he's saying, well, the immigrants are coming. So will America wake up before we're overrun? That's essentially what he's saying. Now, let me give you some information about who Mark Collett is first. Now, he happens to be one of Britain's most high-profile white supremacists. Big surprise. According to HuffPost, he has expressed admiration for Adolf Hitler and has called himself a, quote, Nazi sympathizer. So this is the guy that Steve King was like, oh, yeah. Oh, I love this guy. Oh, this is great. I better retweet that to my racist followers. Now, again, somebody who loves Hitler and loves the Nazis. These are the kinds of prominent, people on the right that are turning up in America and in Europe. A disaster. Now, Nick Ryan, I got a quote here from him. He's the director of communications at the British-based anti-racism advocacy group, Hope, Not Hate. Well, that sounds good, right? Now, he says, no mainstream politician in the right mind should be retweeting Mark Collett. He's a neo-Nazi who used to be the youth leader of the thuggish far-right British National Party here in the UK. which has ties to Holocaust denial, rampant anti-Semitism, helped spawn one of Europe's most infamous neo-Nazi gangs, Combat 18, and which once included among its number David Copeland, a bomber who targeted London's minority communities with a series of nail bombs in 1999. Those nail bombs, of course, killed 3 people, including a pregnant woman, and wounded scores of others. That's who this guy is. Mark Collett, right? And Steve King's like, oh, I like that guy. Yeah, he's got a great outlook on life and minorities, man. Got to retweet that. More information about Collett. He was also the subject of a 2002 Channel 4 documentary in the UK called Young, Nazi, and Proud, in which he said that AIDS is a friendly disease because blacks, drug users, and gays have it. And of course, to show his rampant anti-Semitism, he said in the documentary, quote, "The Jews have been thrown out of every country, including England. Let's face it, when it happens that many times, it's not just persecution. There's no smoke without fire." Oh no, it's the Jews' fault. Wow. Not only that, but he's, of course, part of the blog Angry White Men, which is interesting. Collett has been a frequent guest on white nationalist or alt-right podcasts. Just last month, he co-hosted an episode of This Week on the alt-right. The episode's special guest was American white supremacist and former KKK leader David Duke, whom Collett praised. So, yeah, look, the shit often floats to the top, right? Well, in this case, that's what we have. Shit. And here's one of our politicians. And Ryan said something earlier. Nick Ryan quoted earlier saying that no mainstream politician in their right mind. But here's the thing. We have gone so insane in America that our mainstream politicians, so-called, are crazy, are openly retweeting and agreeing with neo-Nazi fascists. That's what we have going on in America in 2018. Our system is so skewed and to the right. We have gone so far to the right that this is who they are. This is who they are. You think Steve King's going to lose his re-election? I doubt it. Why? Because they agree with this stuff. This is who they are. This is who the modern Republican Party is. They're nationalists. And they are racist. So, look, and to show you that, we have more, of Steve King's racist tweets here. He once said that America should not apologize for slavery. He said that, of course, he went along with the birtherism. Oh, President Obama was born in Kenya. And also said this famous line: "For every undocumented immigrant who's a valedictorian, there's another 100 out there who weigh 130 pounds, and they've got calves the size of cantaloupes because they're hauling 75 pounds of marijuana across the desert." Believe me, there's a lot of people who would love to run into those people. Now, there's more. It's not just UK politicians that he loves to retweet. He also expressed admiration for Geert Wilders. Now, Geert Wilders happens to be very anti-Muslim, very Islamophobic, who wanted to ban all mosques and Islamic symbols from the Netherlands. He actually had a selfie with this guy with the caption, quote, "Cultural suicide by demographic transformation must end." That's their worldview. Look, hey, if it's not white babies, it's cultural suicide. In fact, he said, Wilders understands that culture and demographics are our destiny. We can't restore our civilization with somebody else's babies. That's what they believe, man. Oh, no, having immigration, it doesn't matter, legal immigrants or illegal immigrants, that leads to cultural suicide. That is their worldview, and it is incredibly racist. Look, he doesn't understand that American culture is an amalgamation of many different cultures, because throughout history, many different cultures have come to America. Food is a great example of that. And of course, before he committed suicide, Anthony Bourdain went around to different countries and learned about them and tried to expose different people or Americans to different people through food. And so, like I said, food is a great example of it. Just you look here in America, there's so many different foods, right? And they've all been adopted and Americanized, but they come from different places. Now, if you don't believe in diversity, you might want to stop eating things like tacos and pizza, because that's not something that we developed here in America, because we're from all different countries. And you shouldn't be able to celebrate Cinco de Mayo, of course, or St. Patrick's Day, or all the other things that we borrowed from other cultures. Oh, because, well, that's cultural suicide. No, our culture is taking from other cultures and making them into our own thing. That's American culture. We are the melting pot of the world. And people like Steve King and Mark Collett, they don't understand that. They hate that. They hate diversity. They hate people who are different because they're racists and they're white supremacists. I said it. Okay. I think that's fairly clear. So, let's move on. One last story for you guys. Okay. Now, a Michigan woman is suing Target for racial profiling. Now, the story, of course, comes from Detroit's WXYZ, and they're reporting that Ashenia Davis was at a Target location in Southfield, Michigan, when loss prevention officers decided to accost her while she was leaving the store. Now, I mean, wonder why? Oh, right. It's because she was black. Now, the officers basically accused her of stealing. They thought that she was stealing clothes. Now, the officers handcuffed her and took her back into a back room, and they forced her to show that she wasn't wearing a bikini that they assumed that she stole underneath her clothing. To obtain her freedom, WXYZ reports, she had to pull up her skirt with two male employees at Target to prove she hadn't stolen a bikini top, and then had to pull down her pants to prove she hadn't stolen a bikini bottom. And only then would they actually let her leave. Now, Davis told the Detroit ABC affiliate that the incident was, quote, very humiliating. Well, no kidding. First they assume that you are stealing stuff, and then you had to go physically show them. These people who are not law enforcement officers, these weren't police officers, these were loss prevention officers. They have literally no authority, but they handcuffed her anyway. I mean, how does this happen in America where a private corporation can handcuff you and force you to reveal your clothing, your underwear? This is insanity. Now, one more quote here from Davis. She said, "At first I was in shock, of course. Then I felt degraded. It was sad. I was very upset." Now, look, this is what black people talk about when they talk about discrimination, when they talk about unfair treatment, and when you talk about white privilege. You think a white lady is going to be handcuffed, put in a bathroom, and hey, show me your underwear to make sure that you weren't stealing it? No, this does not happen. Okay, and of course, going to racial profiling. Why was she targeted in the first place? There was no indication that she stole a bikini. No, she was racially profiled. And, of course, also could be because the employee in question might have been a perv and wanted to see her in her underwear. I don't know. But I think it's a combination of probably both. But how devastatingly embarrassed would this be if it happened to you? Handcuffed and forced to reveal your underwear. No. Now, Davis and her legal team, which includes Rand and attorney Morris Davis, now intend to sue Target Corporation with claims of racial and gender discrimination. Now, my opinion on that is going to be a little bit controversial. Now, in a statement, Target apologized for the alleged profiling and announced the termination of one employee directly involved in the incident. So, they fired one person. They should probably fire the other who didn't intervene to stop this. But I'm going to be honest, I don't see how this is Target's fault. And they don't have a company policy that says racially profile black people. And if they do, well, that's different. But look, they got rid of the employee. They issued an apology. I don't... Why the lawsuit against the corporation itself? Again, it's not like they allowed it. Now, if it does come out later that this employee did have other complaints against him and a history of profiling and doing similar things, and then they still did not discipline him, well, then that might be different, and I would definitely change my opinion, because then the company could be held accountable for continuing the employment of this person despite numerous complaints. So I think there needs to be more facts in this, and I think, look, if there is a lawsuit that happens, and it's looking very likely, well, then that would end up revealing that too. But we can all agree, of course, I think, that this woman was victimized, and that we as a country should really, I think we should have a conversation about bias, implicit bias. So, because we need to talk about the fact that there's a lot of people that deal with this situation and get no justice at all. And more importantly, we need to listen to the community and understand what they're going through and then work together to solve these problems of implicit bias. Because racism is not going away on its own. That bias that these employees have against black people, it's not going away. So we have to actually do something about it. And I think that starts with a conversation. Okay. That's it. That's all I got for you guys today. I want to thank you all for watching. If you haven't already, please give us a like and a share. Also, subscribe to the channel. I want to give a big thanks, of course, to Mimi for the donation. I really, really appreciate that. That helps us out a great deal. So thank you very much. All right. Anyway. So that's it for the show. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow with a new show. So tune in 3 p.m. Eastern right here, TYT Nation. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot. We'll see you guys tomorrow.